Thank you all so much for joining us today. We're really excited to bring forward DEBI's first event of the year. Just to give everyone a breakdown of how this presentation is going to go, we're going to start with opening remarks. The team's going to introduce themselves, starting with me. Then we're going to go and you're going to hear a word from our president, Nima. And then we're going to get you guys introduced to our faculty advisors. And finally, we're going to introduce you to our speaker today, Dr. Jonathan Mahn. And yeah, so let's just get started. So my name's Vlad. I'm the VP of Events and Logistics for DEBI. I initially, my interest in DEBI stemmed from the fact that I have financial interests. I'm really interested in real estate, and I wanted to sort of join a platform that would combine multiple financial aspects with the career of dentistry, and I hope to get that from DEBI. Next, I'm going to introduce you guys to my friend Bhavya. He is a second year student. Sorry, 1 second here. There he is. And Bhavya, why don't you take the reign?
Sure. So, like Vlad said, my name is Bhavya Jani. I'm the VP of Research here at DEBI. And apart from that, I also sit on the student council at UWAS as the VP of External Events. And the main reason I got into DEBI, obviously because the business skills in dentistry, those are not exactly a focus usually at dental schools. So I wanted to learn that, obviously. But more importantly than that, I think those skills are very translatable to other ventures that I do want to pursue later in life, such as real estate, like Vlad said, investments in general, consulting, and all those things. So I think the skills that we could learn from DEBI could be translatable to a whole bunch of different fields. And that's something that I want to pursue as early as possible. And plus, the people at DEBI are pretty cool, so I like being part of DEBI too.
Perfect. Thanks, Bob. Now I'd like to introduce Nima L. He's also a second-year dental student. Nima.
Hi. Hello, everyone. I'm Nima Ligman. I'm from class of 23. I'm the VP of Promotions at DEBI, and also I'm the VP of Research at FCDSA. So I guess many of you, I also do not come from a family of dentists, but from the very first time that I got exposed to dentistry, I realized that business and entrepreneurship in different aspects are definitely big aspects of my future career as a dentist. So I'm very lucky to be part of this initiative, to bring something to the table, to learn and share about dental business. And I mean, who would pass on an opportunity to work with like-minded friends and future colleagues? Thanks, Vlad.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sherry Shergan, and my role in DEBI is the VP of Internal Communications. The interdisciplinarity of dentistry and the potential to grow both in and with the field is one of the things that really attracted me to this profession. So I'm really excited to be here today for our first event, and I'm honored to be part of this initiative.
Perfect. Thanks so much. So now I'd like to introduce Saif. He is a third-year dental student.
Thanks, Vlad. Hi, everybody. As Vlad said, my name is Saif. I'm a third-year dental student, and I'm the VP of External Communications here at DEBI. I'm also the VP Finance for the FCDSA at the moment. And the reason I'm here today is because I think an understanding of business is essential for practicing dentists. I know people tend to confuse that with profit and the bottom line, but I truly believe that it comes down to patient care, and running a great and efficient practice allows you to provide quality and efficient care for your patients. And that's what they're there for, right? They're here to get the care that they deserve. And to do that, we need a properly running business. And so that's hopefully what you will all take away from this today.
Next, we got Christian. Christian.
Hi, everyone. My name is Christian, and I'm the VP of Finance here at DEBI. I pursued dentistry because I like the technical aspects of it. But then at the end of the day, business is intrinsically related to dentistry. And I think it's important for us to know that. And we don't really get a lot of valuable knowledge about business and dentistry in dental school. And after speaking with a lot of dentists, this was a problem for them. And then they found that even though that they may be successful, they know other people who find that the financial struggles and the stress of running a business in dentistry can kind of make someone lose their passion in dentistry. So I want to increase the excitement. I want to make people in dental school look forward to the business aspect of dentistry rather than being intimidated by it. So I'm happy that Dr. Mahn is here to talk to us today.
Great. Thanks, Christian. And lastly, out of the team, I'd like to introduce Nima Noyan. He's our president. So Nima.
Hey everyone, thank you all for joining us today for the event. My name's Nima, as Vlad said. I'm the president of DEBI. I'm super glad that everyone can make it out to attend the seminar today. Dr. Mahn has a really informative talk that he very kindly put together for us, and the DEBI team has been super hard at work until now to put this all together. So I just want to start by thanking everyone for everything leading up to this point. To me, this is a special moment, not only because it was the accumulation of a lot of effort and like visionary thinking from a lot of people, but also because I believe it's a stepping stone towards change in the field of dentistry. If I was to ask most people what the first word that comes to their mind is when I say business, they might say corporation or money or finance or other words like that. Although these might be our default associations, what I'd like to do today is to challenge us to begin shifting our perceptions of business more towards the idea of freedom. Now, to explain that a little bit further, to me, this freedom means a lot of things. First off, and at the most basic level, financial freedom is something that obviously comes with being able to competently run a successful business. Although that's easier said than done, I'm sure this is a concept that we all had in mind when entering this profession. Next, there's the idea of freedom of navigating our careers. By this, I mean being able to make informed choices for ourselves in our professional life, whether it comes to signing associateship contracts or making a long-term plan for a startup or forming partnerships or making investments. This facet of the freedom allows us to do what's best for us and to be in the driver's seat of our own careers. Beyond all of this, though, I think the most exciting freedom that comes with concurrently understanding your work from both the business and clinical aspects is that it opens the door for creativity and innovation. Throughout the time that I've been in this program, I've had the chance to talk to several of my peers, and I found out that a lot of people have ideas that they're really passionate about and think could be effective. The roadblock to innovation at this point doesn't come from a lack of creativity and passion. I think that it's actually stemming from a lack of knowledge on how an idea can be implemented. This is where I think the value of business competency and freedom of innovation becomes evident, because if there's anybody out there who knows dentistry well enough to be able to spawn new ideas and technologies, it's the dentists themselves. Ultimately, what we're trying to provide with DEBI is this toolkit for success and freedom. I hope that by growing our perspectives this way, we can set ourselves up for better careers and that we can push the forefront for innovation in the dental field. With that, I'll pass it back to Vlad to introduce our faculty advisors and kick off the event. I'm super excited, and I hope that everyone learns a lot and enjoys the talk. And thank you guys all again for tuning in. Enjoy.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Nima. So we do have faculty advisors part of the club. We have Dr. Sabharwal and Dr. Abasdaya. Dr. Sabharwal couldn't make it today because he's in clinic, but I do have Dr. Abasdaya here who is going to introduce himself.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kevin Abasdaya. I'm an oral maxillofacial surgeon at Interface Clinic, and very proud to be part of this group and part of this initiative. You know, like Nima said, and the thing that strikes me is the eloquence of the speakers that you've had so far. A million years ago, when I was a dental student, business, if you mentioned the word business in the context of dentistry, it was a dirty word. It was something that you never said. You hung your shingle, you went to work, and you were proud that you were a dentist, and that was it. And that life took care of itself. Landscape is changing. Things are different. There are lots of threats, a lot of opportunities, and because of that, there are a lot of chances to change and, again, like you have mentioned before, make things better. So there is really no reason to be apologetic for the fact that you're running a successful practice at the end of the day, running a successful business, because the work-life balance that you have to strike comes from the fact that you have that security, you have that freedom to be able to do the things that you've said. You all should be very proud of yourself. Everybody who's on this, all 60 of you, you know, that you've taken time away from a Saturday to be here. That's an incredible thing. And I know this group is growing exponentially. You couldn't have picked a better speaker for your inaugural talk. Dr. Mahn is an amazing clinician. He is great in what he does, and he's an excellent communicator. He's the consummate teacher. So well done to everything. I'm very happy to be part of this. And please feel free to reach out if I can be of any help. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kevia. So thanks very much for everyone for introducing ourselves. We're going to pass it on to Dr. Jonathan Mahn now. Dr. Jonathan Mahn is a Schulich Dentistry alumni. He has been practicing for a number of years. He's an exceptionally talented clinician. Hopefully today we're going to go over a couple of points. We're going to try to address overviews and joys of pitfalls of owning a clinic, the importance of establishing your career, and what it's like being an owner versus private practice, skill development, and stuff like that. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce Dr. Jonathan Mahn and pass it on to you, and you can go ahead and start your screen share.
I'll unmute myself here. Can everyone hear me okay? Screen shared all right? Good. My screen just started to glitch for the first time in 6 months of working on this computer every day, so I've got a backup laptop just in case. I sent you guys my presentation as well. So thank you all very much for having me. Safe for the initial introduction to Nima and Debbie. What an awesome honor to be here, but also what a fantastic initiative and something that is near and dear to my heart. I spoke to Dr. Garcia about some of your passions being the same as mine, and previously saying that what an opportunity that Western has, not just with Ivy being close, but with the energy from all of you looking to expand your horizons and to be the consummate dental professional. Even if you're not owning and you're associating, these conversations are much deeper with our patients when we do have an understanding of value and how we have the right conversation is reflected on our experiences and as Nima said, the knowledge that you're seeking here. So it's a brilliant initiative by all of you, and congratulations. Dr. Abazadeh, excuse me, I thank you for the kind introduction. I've been following kind of you from a distance over my career, and let me tell you, you've made an impact on our profession, both locally and provincially and beyond. And I've seen you create a lasting impact on many of us. I would say younger dentists. I am not anymore, but thank you for all you've done for our profession and for taking a leadership initiative with this group. So we'll start it off. I mean, this will be, I really like to engage people when I am speaking, so it's a little interesting to see, or to not see you all, as I should say. I'm going to keep my chat open here, so if there are questions, please share them on the chat. I'd like to try to engage you. I'll stop if I can see things. If Vlad or somebody would like to interrupt me, please feel free to do so. I'm just going to start a timer here because I can go a little bit over time sometimes, and I'd like to leave room for where you guys want to expand into exploration of what we're talking about here. All right, so some of my objectives, exactly as Vlad briefly touched on: joys and pitfalls of practice ownership, domains and skill sets of ownership, the importance of establishing your career vision now, as well as ownership and private practice skill development. This is not just an hour and a half or an hour worth of information. This is many lifetimes worth of information. And this is intended as a high-level overview today. It's intended to open things up so that you guys can explore the deeper questions and the deeper desires for knowledge in certain areas. I mean, Nima hit on a lot of different facets of being a practice owner or being a dentist in general. And I think there are many, many more experts out there who would be able to delve into tactics and strategies that you can consider even while in dental school. And I would like to hit on some of those today as well. So what do you hope to learn today? If I was a consultant, as I mentioned to some of you just before this opened up, you would say, I have an expectation for my money. Fortunately, there's no money changing hands today, so maybe the bar is low, but I do want to deliver on what you're hoping to learn. I don't want to overpromise, however, and so it's important that if you have questions that haven't been asked, and there were several that were asked earlier, and if there's anything else, please let me know. Send them through the group chat. My purpose today, as I just mentioned, was to hit the high level. However, there is no silver bullet. And I love that freedom was one of the conversations here, because my conversation today is to talk about the true joy that I do have as a principal dentist, as the owner of a practice, as a dentist in general. But as dental students, as medical students, professionals, type A personalities, we are addicted to checklists, to checking off what needs to be done to get my A+, to hit the mark, to reach our target. There's no silver bullet in practice ownership. There is no checklist. There is nothing that I'm going to say that's going to get you there. The answer and the answers that you're looking for is truly in the process itself. That process is a lifetime of experience, lifetimes of experience, and it begins right now. It began when you started dental school and even before. But with every patient that you see right now that you may not see the same as you will in 1, 5, 10, and 20 years, but these little things will change how you manage yourself, manage your interactions with patients, with staff, and how you look at yourself as a dentist, as an entrepreneur, and as a clinic or practice owner. But that process begins now, and we're molding ourselves as pieces of clay. And it's very important that all of you very, very clearly understand that my purpose today isn't to provide the recipe. There are many, many recipes. I've made some pretty bad meals, and many of us have, and that's how we learn to, be the grandfather or grandmother that has these favorite meals that they make. Those recipes get refined with time, and that's part of growing and part of our life. And so my purpose today is kind of share with you what has worked for me, what I have learned. And of course, it's not exhaustive by any means, because we could go on, like I said, for an entire master's or PhD in little areas of this. So I'm going to try to weave in to my discussion today, kind of my history, the tale of a GP practice owner, if you will. And so again, it's very strange staring at just my own slides and a screen without having visual feedback. I strongly appreciate nonverbal body language so that I can go closer or drift from certain areas. So I'll work with that today. And this is a new experience for me. So it begins here. I live in Ancaster, Ontario. I'm 39 years old. I graduated Western in 2007. I did a GPR at Sunnybrook. It was surgically focused. My father had a dental practice. My uncle is a dentist. My cousin is now a dentist. My third cousin works with us as a dentist. My younger brother is he's in his second year of dental technology at George Brown. My aunt is a hygienist. So I guess I found myself in a pedigree of many dental clinicians, and it's interesting for family dinners and Christmas, and makes for lots of discussion that those non-dental people are nauseated by. So this all began my journey, in undergrad, first year. I didn't do so hot. I grew up doing well in school. My mom was an immigrant from Indonesia. She, my dad was 5th generation Canadian, but I was raised, with Kumon math. I played piano. I was involved in a ton of extracurriculars. That was just life for me. And so when I went to Mac in undergrad and experienced freedom and not being home for the first time, I kind of took it to the next level. I was a year younger than everybody. And fortunately, calculus carried me through in some of my maths, but I got a D+ in 1A3 chemistry. It was pretty devastating. I didn't work too hard, or I thought I worked hard. I tried. I didn't necessarily succeed. This was a very, very big turning point in my life, because all these things that I thought of, not thinking of dentistry, I was near failure. This was a tough thing for me. For many of you, you might have experienced failure in different ways, but for some of you, you've not really experienced what feels like failure when you're, a people pleaser or an A+ student. Fortunately, I met my wife, who is a very, very studious woman at the time. She's an emergency physician now, and she literally turned me around, got me in the right direction, hit us our straight A's so we get into dental school, medical school, and here I am today. But the lesson here is the first lesson, and this has nothing to do, of course, with what we're talking about in terms of practice ownership, but it has everything to do. And I'm going to run through some lessons today in terms of what lessons have I learned in all of this. And embracing failure is a critical point to practice ownership and to success as a dentist in your career. You must embrace challenges. You must embrace failure. It's truly only failure if you fail to learn. Therefore, what do you take from it? How do we grow from it? How do we not let this get us down? The challenge of type A professionals of perfectionism is that depression can affect approximately 1/3 of medical students. This affects dental students as well. Some of you have had this experience. Some of you are going through this right now. I can name multiple dental students who dropped out of my class, who stayed with it and persevered and are now very successful specialists. I can name a few who this has affected. And I'm telling you this right now because COVID's been difficult for many of us as clinicians. And these points are salient and clear to your success as an owner and an entrepreneur, because there will be failures and you must persevere through them. There is no growth unless you learn to endure, unless you experience some of that suffering. This does make you stronger. Yes, it sounds like one of these things that you've heard in a million podcasts, you've seen from a million thought leaders, but I'm trying to have these points resonate with you right now to allow you to have something of a mantra to go through. This all began in 1978. My father graduated U of T Dents, married my mom soon after, and set up his shingle. He did a little bit of associating, but in 1979, opened up a practice in the small town of Paris, Ontario. They bought a little place and had this building. As you can see, he had a lawyer there. This building was his first foray into ownership of a building. He literally put his name out there. My mom was his assistant and front desk, and they just said, hey, we're open to patients. And they started with patient number 1 in 1979. This was an interesting time. Recession was near. Interest rates were exceedingly high. I only hear these stories right now, but more so under COVID, because they talk about the challenges of times past versus what they're like right now. The times are not the same. With more dentists per capita, there are more people vying for patients. There are more shingles being set up next door to one another. And this truly creates different pressures on us than were created 40 years ago when my dad started setting up practice. So he grew that practice one patient at a time. He's a very conservative dentist. He was a general practitioner. But what he did know was that he can't do it all. And many of you here, I know, will have a strong tendency to want ownership because there is that sense of freedom. There is that success. There is that control. And those aren't bad things to desire. But it's important to know that part of this freedom comes at a cost. And that's part of today's conversation, just to put perspective into things. And that's somewhere you can delve in future conversations. And I'm happy to return to focus more deeply on an area that interests you. So 2009, I'm a couple years out of practice, and my father says, it's time for me to sell the practice. My management skills were limited. I was just exploring different areas of dentistry. I was more surgically focused. I came out with IV sedation, moderate conscious sedation certificate from Sunnybrook. And I was very comfortable with what I was doing at the time, but still exploring. I didn't have a patient base, even in my dad's practice. And I started with 90% pedo. Pediatric dentistry was an area that I hadn't focused on a lot. However, it seemed natural at the time, and it allowed me to start somewhere. And it wasn't always what you wanted to do. Sometimes it's what you had to do, as my dad told me. Maybe different people have different opinions. But what you see in that picture is my dad, myself, my brother. And my brother and I were best of friends and worst of enemies. He's 2.5 years younger than me. Don't ask me why we're dressed the same. That is, that was not my decision at the time, apparently. But my brother was not a dentist. He came from a recruiting background. And my father said, I'm selling it to both of you. And I said, what are you talking about? Like, I'm a dentist. But at the time, I wasn't doing too much management other than looking at some of our day-to-day operations and taking some hold of that. It happened naturally. You guys all ask, well, how did you get there? How did this happen? Well, you know, as an associate, you're typically hands-off, but in a legacy practice or in a family practice, obviously there's expectations where people now turn to you. You have that name there. That is a double-edged sword because there's a lot of expectations with that. You know, some of the first things, oh, you don't quite give freezing like your dad. Those things sometimes hurt, and that's an area to grow as well. But that's where that began. So practice ownership is interesting. And I'm going to ask this question if anyone has an answer. I think I've heard a lot of the answers, and because of the nature of how this discussion is going with many people here, the question is, what does ownership signal to all of you? Because if we don't know why we're doing something, it's sometimes very difficult to know when we've actually achieved what we're looking to achieve. Success and freedom, as Nima stated, financial freedom, navigating your career on your own, having that control over things. Many of these are reasons to own a practice, and they are not bad reasons to own a practice. But sometimes we look at, no matter what we think or what we will say or deny, you look at those who are successful and they're driving a Porsche, or they've got a big house, or they're only working X number of days, or they take these kinds of holidays, or they have X number of associates. These are kind of these desires that we see, and we put these people on a pedestal. And this is often what we seek in ownership. And it may be not what we seek, but what it symbolizes for us, that freedom. And absolutely it is true. And you do have that freedom. But freedom also comes with the cost. And that's some of the exploration of what we're talking about here. The reality of that is important to be aware of. David Allen is a thought leader globally. He has a program called Getting Things Done, or the GTD method. You can look him up. And it's trying to get your life into focus and trying to figure out, how do you do all these things at one time? You know, we can't do everything. So he says you can do anything, but not everything. So in dentistry, we see ourselves as practice owners. We're business owners. We're entrepreneurs. We're consultants. We're inventors. There are so many incredible opportunities in our profession. We're so blessed. But we are one of the rare professions where we're also on the front line. We are the dentist, grinding it out. We are the surgeon, you know, in our op, taking on call. You know, when we look at these scenarios, you have so many hats that are not expected of a dragon from the dragon's den. You aren't just CEO, but you are also frontline. And then everything in between. You might not be manager, but you're manager. You are hitting all 4 tiers of ownership in the corporate structure. And we're expected to know these things. You guys are taking a wonderful path forward in taking ownership of this. But it is very, very important to know that you can't do everything. So you have to decide, where is my focus? This is my brother, David Mahn, the gentleman I talked about. He is my brother. Calling him a gentleman may be something I would rarely do as my brother, and maybe your siblings, you'd feel the same way. And like I said, we battle it out physically, verbally, and emotionally, but we always seem to come back squared up. My dad would not sell the practice to me without my brother being part of it. He was working in the practice at that time. He had moved from Toronto. He was a headhunter for engineering and IT. So he had nothing to do with dentistry. But what he did have were certain skills that I did not have. Financial awareness, business operations, structure, organizational development, how to speak to a CEO, how to get a phone call made, how do you send an email properly, what tone do we use, how do we express a sense of urgency. These were skills and tactics that he learned in his career that we typically don't have until later in our career, if at all. Some of us learn it organizationally. I'm involved actively with the ODA. And these are areas that we feel sometimes overly challenged when we're there on our own. So it's very important that ownership support is one of the things you begin thinking about now. Who's going to support you? Is it a brother? Is it a cousin? Is it a parent? Is it a colleague? Is it an MBA? Is it a CA? Is it just somebody that you trust? But for you to do it all yourself is trying to do everything when you are still managing your patients from a day-to-day basis. That is not easy. There are many structures for that. That's not a conversation for today, but it is important that we acknowledge this. Vlad, he stated, personally, I find that ownership gives the clinician potential to take your practice in any direction. That is absolutely the freedom that you're speaking of. That is amazing because yes, it can be as big or as small or as medium or as flexible as you want it. And that ownership can reflect your desires and the direction that you want to go. And absolutely, that is part of what we talk about when we talk about vision, both clinically and in your life. There's a story, a legend that goes back to the early centuries called the Sword of Damocles. Damocles was a courtier for King Dionysus, and King Dionysus was sitting on his throne, and Damocles comes up and says, "Oh king, what a glorious life you must have. You have all the wealth, you sit on this throne, you've conquered your enemies, you have nothing to worry about. Beautiful women play the lyre and the harp and the flute behind you while someone feeds you grapes. What I would give to spend a day in your chair, in your throne." And King Dionysus says, "You know, Damocles, why don't you sit on it for a day? See what this experience is like. You should try it on." So Damocles sits in the throne and he looks up, and above him there's a sword pointing right above him, right down on him. And it's being held on the pommel by a horsehair, a single horsehair from above. And it's dangling there. And he looks up and King Dionysus says, "Be reminded, with great fortune and power also comes great danger. Getting to this throne was not easy. I had enemies, I had battles, I had demons, I may have wealth, but in a moment it could all be lost." And no more truthful has this resonated with us than with COVID. Never in history before in our profession, or in many professions, when we are considered recession-proof, have we been in a situation where that sword has been so close to all of us, or to many of us, where that horsehair thread is above you. And it's always a reminder, and it's a constant reminder. So my job today and my overriding purpose is to say, reflect on the freedoms, reflect on the glory, reflect on the ability to take your practice in any direction, but temper it carefully. Be mindful, look at the other side. My brother and I always talk about when we look at opportunities, there's value in everything. Whatever you want to do, you'll figure out a way to justify it. There's always value in everything. But it's easy to overestimate the value when we don't often look at the other side and say, what's potentially at risk here? Consider this always when you go into your career and ownership with this mindset. It is very important that you ask these questions before you ask the questions of the upside. The upside will always, always, always be great. Seeking support is one of the most important things that you need to get out of today. The support that you're going to get will come through some of your DEBI talks, lectures, conversations, but it also comes through career management, through industry, and through professional dental resources. My job today isn't to give you every detail of how you get there. It's to say, here, if I could package this up and just put a title on it, if I could put a box on it for you, what does seeking support mean? How do we do that? Where do we go for that? They will have the answers. I don't have all the answers. I'm still learning. What I'm learning is that my network must be strong. And I don't like that term because I find it disingenuous. But in truth, it's those who you draw close. It's those who you seek mentorship from. And when we look at those possible individuals, We look at career management and we say, who's there to support us? Who do we look for? Right now, starting now while you're students, there are dental niche specialists. There's some vultures that are after you in school. You know who they are. They're not all bad people. Vultures need to eat too. They may be lucky in where they are. They might have earned the place they have. But frankly, at the end of the day, a lot of these have these specialists have a dental niche. And I'm not talking a specialist like Dr. Avazadeh. I'm talking specialists like accountants, lawyers, leasing advisors, financial advisors, people within your wheelhouse that have come to you, bankers, investment advisors. These people are sometimes difficult to sort. If you go on LinkedIn, you may have already seen them every single day hitting up your door. However, it's important that somebody who does have a dental niche does know the experiences that you've had. They know that pain. They've seen people go through the depression, the depression I spoke of earlier, of the type A. They know how to get past these burdens. Seek these people out. It's not for me to tell you who to go to, and I can make recommendations, and I would. Dr. Kayvon would probably say the exact same thing. He's got people who he's drawn close as well. When one of the questions that was asked previously was how do we find some of these people? Who are some of these people to speak with in terms of specialists, so to speak? Look right now, ask around, ask your professors, ask your teachers. The Friday clinicians are amazing. The adjunct professors do have a large stake in practice ownership in many cases. Talk to them. Don't just settle at one advisor as well or specialist. Talk to more. This is where it begins. Your questions will come clearly, but those who have wisdom are those individuals. Professional dental resources. The ODA is an obvious one for me, not just because I chair membership services and programs. I was also on the ODA's Return to Practice Working Group. I took a step back from that recently with trying to return our own practice to full strength. However, the ODA has a tremendous number of services that we're not even aware of. Even I'm not aware of. Even that is my committee right now. The CDA has opportunities that allow you to grow. That's starting right now. The college does have resources. They have practice advisory if you have questions. It's very, very important that you learn the compliance questions from a regulatory standpoint right now. What are the rules that we live by? Know them, breathe them. Because what happens is you graduate, and some of these things that we didn't address ethically, where if you're not clear on what the standard is, it's very easy to bend. It's very important that you hold yourself to a high standard ethically, because otherwise you will be swayed. You will make decisions that would not necessarily be considered unethical, but gray, but it's a slippery slope. So it's important that you hold that standard and know that standard. Practice advisory is a great place to find the standard, know the law to live by, so to speak. Your local component society is something to look at now. If you know where your career is going, if you know where you want to be, even if you don't, there is a London dental district society, I believe it's called. It's important to get involved. Go back to your hometown, talk to your hometown dentist, get involved in your component society. These are your colleagues. These are the people around you who are dealing with the same struggles or have dealt with them. These are your mentors. Talk to your specialists. Your specialists are an amazing resource as well. These individuals are people who help us as GPs. Know that they're not a holy entity, although it may feel that way sometimes. There's a level of respect that that they achieve, and hegemonically or symbolically, sometimes that remains innate in us. Get to know your specialists, draw them close, share with them. What a wonderful resource that we have in them. Learn what the standard is of excellence in terms of clinical care. Don't be ashamed to share your challenges, but find those who are less quick to judge and more willing to mentor. Professionals with a dentist niche, absolutely. That kind of covers our above folks as well. But anybody who's involved in our profession knows some of the pitfalls that we face, and they can help you go over some of the solutions to those challenges. Industry support, an untapped resource. You have it right now. There's supplier reps, there's service technicians, there's labs, there's lab techs, there are recruiters, there are implant reps. Find these people. They know who's looking. They know who wants an associate. They know the good practices. They know the practices that may be less ethical, less clinically skilled. You'll want to ask these questions when you're purchasing a practice or going to associate. Think of this as a back door. Think of this as expanding your network in ways that most people aren't considering. Start now, develop these relationships, ask the questions. Don't do it disingenuously. Do that with a true spirit of curiosity. And they'll recognize that, yes, you're eager. You all are. I know that. I share your passion for this curiosity and this entrepreneurial kind of fire that's lit under your rear end day in and day out. And whether or not you want to seek practice ownership or just associate, it's important to consider that you do have friends in these different places and there is value there. A service technician is something that no one considers, but there are service technicians at the school. There is one, at least. When they're servicing a handpiece or a chair, look over their shoulder, ask them questions. When you have a problem that needs fixing, see what they're doing, talk to them. There are skill sets here that are so worth it as an owner, even if you don't like technical kind of details, to learn how to fix a small issue with your chair or with a machine. Not something we all want to do, but can truly come in handy. 5 minutes can be the difference between losing a day in your operatory. So consider these things, especially for those of you who are technically inclined. I skipped a slide there, but our community report is one of the best resources. And this was a question from somebody who says, how to find the correct practice location. Start this now. Talk to all the people that we just mentioned, but look at this community report through the ODA. Go onto the site, click on member resources, and you will find this community report. I can help you all with that if you need to, but you should be able to find it or connect with the ODA. And you can submit postal codes. This all comes from Stats Canada. But through this, you can look at the different communities where you'd like to live, or where you'd like to work, or where there are practices for sale. Right now, you can go to the brokerages and sign up onto their practice lists and see what's up for sale. Get used to knowing the numbers, having benchmarks, understanding what you need to look at. What's the conversation that's being had when we talk about practice ownership? What is important to people? How are you not going to get the wool pulled over your eyes when it's your turn? Start now. It's an exciting hobby since you're here. This might be, an opportunity for little workshops for you all. And having a potentially a broker have a discussion with, say, how do we look at these things? How do we talk and think about them? But the community report from the ODA is something that's part of your member benefits, and it allows you to take these stats in these postal codes and compare them. 55 plus, if I'm going to do implants, or I'm going to do dentures, or am I going to be a prosthodontist? Baby boomers have dollars that they're willing to spend if you understand the generational drives. This is something to consider. What about kids? What if I'm going to be a pediatric dentist? What if I hate pedo? What if I want to have an associate do pedo and I want a lot of that? Over 50% of my practice is pediatric. I haven't seen a kid in a number of years. Over 30 years into practice, under 10 years in practice, this talks about the number of dentists. Sorry, this is the dentists specifically in terms of their age groups. I apologize. But these dentists, it talks about their backgrounds and who's in the area. If we've got a whole bunch of retirees, maybe I just want to go through the college, find them all and send them a letter and say, hey, can I talk to you? Would you mentor me? What a match made in heaven if you can have a transition like that. Value for all. Don't forget, many people, if they're talking to 123 or Dental Corp or some of the larger DSOs, you still own the practice for 5 years. Not everyone necessarily wants that burden, even though the valuation comes high. That's another conversation as well, and the pitfalls and joys of that. But these are scenarios where you can address and assess what's going on in a particular demographic, how many practitioners there are. When you look at your community that in question, it will talk about the visibility, the access, the concentration of offices, the local area, how many specialists are there. What a valuable resource for us. Then when we start looking at the population, it talks about the age of people there. And that's what I was getting at before, and I apologize for glossing over that. But this is of strong consideration when you look at, you know, some of this information, their educational attainment, and what kind of labor is in this area. I'm in an area where there's a lot of trades. Brantford is one of the most booming communities potentially. However, there is also a lot of dentists there. I'm in a smaller community, so we pull from a lot of farmers and areas that are, you know, somewhere between, let's say, Woodstock and Brantford. But Brantford is a major point for us as well. Me personally, I look at my own career and say, you know, is this the right place? But we look at a time now with COVID potentially hitting a lot of people, and manufacturing's done well. There's a lot of union jobs. There's a lot of patients who are in healthcare, aeronautics from Kitchener-Waterloo area. And there's something to be considered when you look at what the industry is in an area, what's failed. You know, Massey Ferguson was a massive plant in Brantford that got shut down, and, you know, a lot of dentists lost a lot of patients, a lot of people lost a lot of jobs. Consider these things. When we look at visible minorities in different populations, we want to consider, in these minorities, do I want to serve my own culture or community if there's that there? Some people say this is an excellent opportunity to begin. Some people say I don't want to because then I'm going to be asked to do everything for nothing. You know, there's ways to respond to all that. That's not for today as well, but there are things to consider, and there are awesome opportunities to serve your community as well, in your cultural community. The ODA job board is also an opportunity to find work and to present yourself to a dentist for hire. You know, it's also a way to look at who's hiring. So it goes both ways. This is going to be much better with our new website with the ODA. COVID's put a little damper on that, but it should come in the new year, and it will make things a lot easier for all of you when you're ready to graduate. So this is the resource center, as I showed you, or I was discussing earlier. You'll want to hit some of this website to assess what is out there. This is a wonderful opportunity to start your exploration into practice ownership. The CDA has Oasis. You may have seen that. Get the app if you don't have it. There's a lot of different talks on there. So there's some great stuff, some related to ownership, some related to clinical information. There's lots of little quick tidbits as well. I'd strongly recommend at least glossing over it so you can get your you know, 30 seconds, 30-second hit to find out what information is available there. Lesson number 2, seek wisdom and knowledge where you are weak. Seems like such an obvious one here, but of course, it's something that we don't stop and reflect on. We continue to focus on our strengths and go deeper and deeper and deeper, but we have a huge blind spot. Where are your blind spots? Identify them. Find out where you're weak personality-wise. Build that side of your personality. If you're insensitive and you're cold and you're bold, you need to learn some sensitivity. You need to learn some empathy. If you are very sensitive and very empathetic, you may be weak in that area of being direct, having a direct conversation with somebody. Both sides are needed. Both are required. Seek that wisdom, seek that knowledge, read those books, talk to the experts, but don't focus on your strengths only. Some will say focus on your strengths only. That's an easy one because we enjoy that and it's our natural side. 2013, back to my career, my brother and I expanded the practice. We were growing beyond our walls. We dug out a basement, we poured concrete, we put in an elevator, we put in a retaining wall. It was a very large investment. That's a school behind us. So we had a lot of growing pains, but it was worth it. It was an investment. It puts you in puts a whole new hat on you as a practice owner. You know, you're now having to negotiate. You're looking at different contracts. You know, you've got a whole nother ball of wax to deal with. And we were building as we were working because it was a growth opportunity in our same building. That was an interesting experience as well. But it's hard to relate to that until you've grown through it. So you speak to others and you speak to the contractors, and you know, the contractors weren't sensitive to the dental burden. And sometimes that may be worth discussing because they know how to manage this. Whereas we had to manage that alone because of the contractor that we work with, who was wonderful, by the way. But it was still a challenging experience for patients staff and ourselves as owners. So years 31 to 40, we ended up with this renovated building in downtown Paris. That's my op that you can see on the left side. And then on the right is kind of a front view in the winter. That is not our steeple. There is a church behind us, but we bought the adjacent property, and we thought, you know, what would be really cool? We have a lot of kids. We used to play in McDonald's Playland when we were kids. And we said, oh, it would be awesome to have McDonald's Playland like in our place, something like this experience. So we built it, and we, next to our elevator, put a slide that goes from the main floor right down to the kids area into what we call Smile City. They can climb back up and do it again, and it goes into a whole big play area there. Unfortunately, COVID has shut all of this down, rendering our significant value to our patients and our kids, along with the open concept area for their recalls, to be somewhat on hold. But it allows us and puts the pressure on us to create new avenues for opportunity. One question that was asked was, why one big practice instead of multiple small practices? And the answer comes from my father, who had some other mentors, which he spoke of. And he said, physical plant utilization. Those were the three words he said, physical plant utilization. You know, this is an opportunity that puts pressures on you as an owner, as a dentist, to start being creative. We were utilizing our ops pre-COVID at some click of like 120, 140% of what an average operatory use would be, because our dentists only worked out of a single operatory. COVID has now completely forced us to and allowed us the opportunity to restructure all of our operations focused on the patient. It has been the most painful thing of my entire life. And I think I might be doing a talk with the ODA on my COVID experiences, and that's a whole separate issue. But that is some of the pain and the pitfalls. But growing through that is a lifetime experience that I'll be able to share with my grandchildren and great-grandchildren, God willing, one day. In 2017 and 2018, we bought two separate practices, both within town. One was across the street, and one was on the other side of town, up the street. And these were interesting experiences because now we had the opportunity to grow. We chose to bring those practices in. Why? Physical plant utilization. I didn't explain what that really means, but the goal of that was your expenses are less because we have less land, we have less property, you have less overall expenses, everyone's under one roof, and we're able to leverage the people, leverage the services, leverage what we have in that space. Obviously, it causes us to rebuild the space many times, and we will be at another rebuild. There's been many renovations in our practice over the last 40 years. But it created a new learning experience for myself, my brother, and our team as we brought other dentists in, as we brought other staff in, as we brought other patients in. And the two experiences could not have been more polarizing. Again, that's another discussion in terms of what we learned from that. But what an opportunity to, as Vlad said, take your practice in any direction. You know, we look at it now on the other side saying, well, you know, you've grown so much, but how do you start utilizing your hours better? Why is a chair open? If we're open till 8, why is something open from 7 till 8? So you start looking at the value of your chair time. Why do we do things in a certain way where everyone does the same thing in each op? If one person can do that and leverage different people. These are some of the values of the pressure of physical space being a challenge, and it causes you ways to think more innovatively and start thinking outside the box instead of doing what everybody does or what we've always done, because that's the way we do things. My dad retired last year. You know, the mayor came and spoke nicely about him and about our practice and its impact in the community, and that was the end of an era. And everything that I've learned, not just from my father, but from many of his colleagues and many of his mentors, I've been fortunate enough to have these generations of experience. It's my job to be able to share that with all of you. And I'm passionate about it because, you know, this is what I love. I love talking shop. As Safe or Brittany Pollock, who's on here, can tell you, I've had many conversations, but this is what I feel I was born to do, like many of you, not just dentistry, but an entire professional experience from top to bottom. We talk about the joys and pitfalls. I was in Hawaii in March. Not many people get to go to Hawaii with their 3 kids. It was my first time. What a great experience. That mountain that we climbed on the right, there's a volcano, I think Diamond Head in Honolulu. And everything looks great. But you see that sword in between these photos. And we look at that and we say, wow, what a great experience. What you don't know is that I was waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning every day, meeting with my team. I'd have a conversation with the ODA, and I was walking up with my AirPods up and down for a week, different places that we went, trying to manage our practice from abroad. How do we make these college changes? What about aerosolization? What's even going on? What restrictions do we have? These were all questions that we had to answer very quickly and with a lot of challenges. These are the pitfalls of practice management. You do have that freedom, but with that freedom, there is a sword that hangs there, and you live and die by that. And so don't forget that. So lesson number 3, temper your expectations because the crown is heavy. And we all want to wear that crown as entrepreneurs, as practice owners. But when you wear that crown, yes, it does weigh heavy. And sometimes it may tilt your neck in one way, sometimes in the other, but be mindful. The joys of dental practice and ownership are like no other. Excellence and gratitude, doing good work, nothing more satisfying. A happy patient, a thankful patient, that is far greater than any dollars. We'll all be able to have a successful career, associate, owner, or otherwise. But to truly have that gratitude and appreciation and pride from that patient, there is no feeling like that. That is a reward that is so unbelievable. Happy staff, that is awesome. Being on time, that is a good day. Finishing a great case, that feels good. I've got so many tales of patients whose lives that we've changed, that my dad's changed, that our associates have changed, and there is no greater feeling. People like cases. I like to throw some cases there. This was a more straightforward case that may seem complex. For me, this is one of those days that was a good day. This is the experience of practice that we love. So obviously, and Dr. Abizadeh might kind of laugh at the simplicity of this, and he would do this in a far quicker manner, I'm certain. But in terms of clearing out this patient's teeth, sedating him, I did a lot of guided surgery, so I'd pre-plan my prosthetic height. We'd reduce bone. This is a guided surgery. Place a couple of implants and a couple temporary implants, and allow this gentleman, within 3 hours, that's a before and after picture, he went from somebody who was maybe seemingly less trustworthy on initial judgment to somebody who just became transformed. This is the joy of practice. This is the joy of practice ownership, when you get to decide what you want to do. But this is a good day. Being on time for this, changing a life, what a wonderful opportunity. And you will all have your own tales of this, and you will all see what glorious experiences these can be. The true importance is the pitfalls. A bad day is awful. My brother says it's not the big things. It is the little things. Death by a million paper cuts. By the way, I had a question from the previous case as what the diagnosis was for the patient. He generalized rampant caries with hopeless prognosis. I believe he had certain medications that he was on that had kind of rotted his teeth out. He didn't take care of them. He claimed he was a biker, and he was a wonderful gentleman, very, very kind, so appreciative. He begged me, he said, please show this to people out there to let them know that you don't have to be ashamed. So that's why I shared that. But in terms of his issues, they were long-standing. So a bad day is death by a million paper cuts. You know, you've got a kid crying in one op, an angry patient at the front, somebody who's behind, a hygienist who's waiting for your recall. Now you have to don and doff and wait for fallow times. You get a letter saying personal and confidential from the college. Your assistant at the end of the day has a breakdown. Another one says, guess what? I'm pregnant. You have to hold her job for 18 months, find someone, hire them, and then hold her job back. It's not necessarily a bad thing, and that's a right thing, having had a wife who's been fortunate to keep her job after a mat leave. But these are the challenges of practice ownership. These are the pains that you experience. These are the bad days. This is what keeps you up at night. It's really important that you understand these things. This is where you want to focus right now. These are the answers that you want. How do we deal with these things? That's what you want to talk to your mentors about. These are the stories that you want to hear. The glory stories are all there. You know them. You know the guy with the Porsche or the sick Benz or Beamer. So consider those things. The joys of revenue growth are amazing, right? Your output is something that we shouldn't be focusing on, but something that's always there, because we are running a business and it has to be successful and it must be sustainable. We purchased our practice. We were able to leverage 2 of us, grow our practice, come at it at a right time. Interest rates were also low. We did a renovation and we were able to triple our revenue at that time. But don't forget, COVID comes and we have a pitfall like no other. There's no revenue. There's minimal stuff coming in for 3 months, yet you have all the expenses. Imagine having a large home, a very large home, right? With a number of staff. And, we have, I think there's 10 GPs. We have 4 specialists that are in, anywhere from weekly to monthly, depending on the specialty. And we had many staff that we had to lay off. It was a very, very difficult time. Still the hardest thing that I have come across in my life, and my father would say the same in his support of us. But these are the pitfalls. We are not immune, but you must persevere. You must not look at things as failure, and you must move forward. So what joy do I get from owning? I love being creative. I love the curiosity of people, of practice, of being able to put a slide in if I want to. It's not all about dollars. That there will be limited joy, and you will never be satisfied if the dollar is what you're chasing, and you will always be satisfied. Entrepreneurship, ownership, and the clinical and scheduling freedom is fantastic. But being on holidays doesn't mean you're on holidays. And the first thing my dad said to me when he retired, or when he sold us the practice, was, this was the first holiday I could truly shut my mind off and not worry about the clinic. And that was 30 years in. So consider those things. What pitfalls do I personally struggle with? Emotional burden. When my staff have a hard day, my team has a hard day, it weighs heavily on me. And COVID was so difficult for that, because we had to change the way we did things, and it didn't make it easy for anybody. We had a lot of people leave. There's staff everywhere that are in short supply, assistants in particular. You can't please everyone, and sometimes we have to make changes because we're running a business. It's easy if you're insensitive. It's very difficult if you're very sensitive. These are things that I've had to work on in my lifetime, and accept that, look, I cannot please everybody, but I do have to be sensitive. Work and family balance, definitely the hardest thing. Something I've talked to some of you about, and some of the students at Western in oral surge. These are areas that are really, really important to focus on right now when you're juggling the balls. Managing your practice versus clinical balance. I personally have not returned from clinic. I have not worked since March 6th. I've been sitting at a desk. I've been in and out of the office as we rebuild all of our procedures, all of our structure. Everything has changed. We took people off desks. We're focusing them in treatment. We're staggering everything that we do in whatever way we can, or we're building to do so. And we're refocusing what we need to do around our patients. That's what we needed to do. There's joy in that creativity, but there is a burden in pleasing everybody. And spending time managing right now is what I need to do before I can return to clinic. Fortunately, I have a team and I have specialists who can do what I do faster, better, more effectively. And so learning to take advantage of that has been one of the pitfalls that have got me through things, and now one of the joys that I have. So lesson number 4 is define your parameters and your boundaries. Adhere to them with discipline. You must set a boundary. You must turn off the phone. You must turn off the notification. You must learn to say no. You'll be seeking opportunities, but there comes a point where you start saying no. Stepping back from the ODA working group, the return to practice working group, one of the most difficult things I've ever done. You all know with what you're doing. Thank you, Vlad. This is one of the things that we want to be certain of, is that we define those boundaries clearly. I'm not going to hit the skill sets because it's kind of covered in detail. I've spoken a lot on some of these other slides, so I'm going to go through to some of the most important ones. HR, compliance, financial, tech, landlord, and time management. These are the juggling balls that we have. Compliance, I put all the things there. You have labor law, health law, Ministry of Health, IPAC, CRA, WMIS, human rights, AOTA or disability, accessibility, regulatory compliance. Compliance is second to none, especially in our province. That in itself is a massive burden, especially during COVID when things are changing on a moment's notice and all the rules change. You got to be prepared. It's tough to do when you're in clinic and you're managing your patients and your family and your team. Time management is critical, and deciding what's most important is critical there. HR is a whole separate conversation. I know there are questions about hiring, which I'll try to hit at the end should we have time. But again, that is something that is I've got some interesting changes that we've done in our practice I'd love to share with you. Lesson number 5, study the business skill sets that you enjoy. Go deep on them. If they are your strengths and they're natural to you, they're your hobby. If it's painting, if it's otherwise, go and enjoy it, right? Your equivalent of painting. But hire a pro for the areas that you don't know. You can't focus on it all. Hit it clearly, hit it quickly, where you know you can. Focus on some of those skill sets, but make sure that you get to know those people who are good in an area they are. And then you can grow there as you please, but don't do it all yourself. As an employer, you must have tact, you must be direct, and you must have emotional intelligence. If there's one thing that you take out of HR from here, understand what emotional intelligence is. Understand what having a high emotional IQ is. If you don't know what that is, write it down, start here, search some podcasts, read some books. For those of you who find that they are highly emotionally intelligent, learn to be direct, learn to have tact. This is not just with patients, but your employees in particular. This is the difference between retention and loss. But emotional IQ is something that is very, very valuable as a practice owner and as somebody who's going to be in a position of making many decisions. This is the HR lesson called the broken windows theory. Rudy Giuliani, when he was mayor of New York did not have the reputation it has now. It was a dangerous place. People didn't want to go there. They found that as soon as there was a broken window, once they replaced it, all of a sudden there was less incivility. The drug dealers wouldn't hang out there anymore. Somebody cared for this place. Somebody cared enough to replace the window the second it was broken. And they started repairing the broken windows and found that the streets were cleaning up. People wouldn't hang around these areas anymore because it was a place where people wanted to be. The real lesson of the transition from that was do not let incivility linger. That is my hardest lesson. When it was hard to be direct with a staff member who I didn't like the way somebody was talking, or, let's say they're swearing in the hallway and there's a patient in the room, like inappropriate, but I was a little sensitive. I didn't want to hurt their feelings. Some of you may not have as difficult a time as me, but incivility is something that must stop now. You must draw the line. You must know, and your team must know where that line is according to your values and the values of your practice. So that should be defined. Do not let incivility linger. Repair the window right away. Your domain as clinician obviously comes with the skill sets that you understand. The goal is mastery of your skill sets. That's 10,000 hours in a particular area, which means you really have to focus on what you want to do. Will you specialize? Will you be a generalist? Will you have a niche? My niche was intravenous conscious sedation. I did a lot of restorative. I've treated a few thousand patients under moderate sedation. Surgical focus was my domain as well that I enjoyed and was blessed with being able to place implants in my residency and have a very, very good set of mentors there. And that started me on the right note. I knew where to draw the line, and I had mentors as well that I would refer to. And as a result, we referred more surgery out than most practices, because you have an understanding of where that line is drawn and what is within your skill set, comfort and safety above all. The goal is to master your skill set, but it means you have to have focus. So build your clinical skills one area at a time. Define your clear objective goals now if you know what they would be. Know where you want to go with things and start the process now. If you think you like endo, if you think you like surgery, if you want to be a restorative master, rehab, dentistry, begin thinking about it right now. But as generalists, it takes 5 years really to get in there and start to really have these true experiences, because you're so limited in dental school. You want to start now by focusing on, thinking of what domains I like. Start asking the questions. Don't go all over the place and try to be perfect everywhere, because you will limit yourself. You're a salesperson. We don't want to be. I hate that. I do not want to be a salesperson, but at the end of the day, you have a product, you're trying to deliver value to somebody. You need to be curious. You need to listen. You should be a good storyteller. You should be learning to build relationships. And most of all, you need to learn how to close. What does that mean? This is a whole other talk. I think I did this out west. Some of you may have been there for the FCDSA. But relationship building is the most critical component, not just of practice ownership, but of dentistry. You will be selling yourself, not just to your patients, to your colleagues, to those who refer to you or who you refer to, but all those people within your network as a practice owner that you must be able to have influence with and building trust with. So these are skill sets that are critical. Storytelling, learning to have analogies for treatment is very, very important to educate your patients. Then you don't sell them anything. You're just educating them, but make sure that they understand. That begins right now with you in school. You have this opportunity, 3 hours, ask your dentist, hey, how do you explain this to the patient if they don't understand? Don't let the patient out of your chair if they don't understand perfectly clearly. One word down there, retention. If you learn one thing from practice ownership standpoint, if there's one thing you learn to do well in school right now, confirm their next appointment before they leave the chair. No matter what it is, confirm it. If they have none, confirm a follow-up and do a follow-up for them. Learn what builds a practice, learn what builds trust, learn what builds relationships, learn how to talk to these patients, develop your spiels, as we call them, right now. Now's the time to practice. You have so much time. The easy cases are easy. Put a challenge to yourself right now. When you close with that patient, when you have that retention, that's what builds your practice. That next recall, right? That next assessment, because you haven't been in and you're in for an emergency, figure out what the next appointment should be, figure out how to connect with your patient, the importance of that, educate them, and make sure that they book it and confirm it before they leave. That will be highlighted throughout practice ownership, regardless of what patient, regardless of what clinician is working with you, for you, or if it's yourself. Remember that word retention, because that is the true value of your practice. Lesson number 8 is do not chase dollars. This is an outcome measure. Focus on what people value. It is extremely and exceedingly important to recognize that we are not here with a prime focus of making money. Sustainability is the word that we want to use because we must be sustainable. What does that mean? It doesn't mean profit at all costs. It means running a business that allows you to have a predefined goal for cash flow, for salary, for your life. And it doesn't have to be small. You can live to whatever degree you want. Your business should be able to provide that for you as defined. But your patients are who you're treating. We don't call them clients, although hygienists do. Maybe some do. But they are patients. And we're here to treat people. And we're here to deliver them value. What are they here for? Sometimes they don't even know what is of value. So we say, oh, they weren't interested, but we didn't actually tell them about it. An implant, for example. You know, as a GP, this is, again, another talk that we can have another day. How do we have these conversations with patients? Don't chase dollars. Yes, it is important. Yes, it is an important metric. It is the outcome that we look at, but it is a result of a job well done. How do we do a good job? We satisfy our patients. How do we satisfy our patients? We deliver value. And whatever we're going to provide, whatever service we have, specialist, GP, or like, focus on what that is, know what that is. Practice now. Ask yourself with every patient, what does this patient value? Start now is the answer. Having an action plan is critical. Without an action plan, you become a prisoner of events. Don't be a prisoner. So what determines an action plan? A clinical vision. You have to have a compelling image of the future to know where you're going. It's got to be dynamic, able to change, to pivot, to move, to change direction. And it should be collaborative. It's not just you, it's your team, it's your patients, it's those that are strategically involved with you. If you don't have a vision, you are that little sun down there going every which direction. And you move a little everywhere and we don't move a lot. And yeah, you grow in certain places, but where are you going? If you don't decide what's important, somebody else will. So what is most important? These are vague generalities, but these are the questions that you must answer. And back in Vancouver in January, I spoke to some of you. I asked you to write it down, and I would encourage you after this, know what your vision is. When they were doing the Facebook challenge, I did an ODA talk. They said the 10-year challenge. What does your 50-year challenge look like? Start there. Do you want holidays? Do you want to work 60 hours a week? Do you want to work till you're 80? Do you want to retire when you're 40? Do you want to work in clinic 3 days, 6 days? Where do you want to live? Downtown Toronto? Do you want to live in Alberta? Do you want to live way up north? Decide what that looks like and build around that, because that's going to reflect whether you are an owner in whatever capacity or not an owner, or what area you go into. But it starts there, and then work your way backwards, and then ask the questions of those people who are in a position of mentorship or in a position of experience that can help fill in the blanks of what that life looks like for you. It may not be practice ownership. Maybe I just saw these things and that's what I wanted, but I also want to, work not on Saturdays, let's say. I want to have a free holiday, so to speak. There are options for that too. That's partnership. But you won't know those options until you know what your life looks like. So lesson number 9 is the Rhodes Maxim. How does this end? Go there. Think about that now. Think about that today. The other talks in DEBI are going to be able to fill in some of the gaps of how we get there, but not all of us are going to the same place. I sit at a desk right now. That is not what I anticipated. But over COVID, I realized I'm spending more time with my children. I see them go to school. I see them come home. What a joy. I'll be 40 soon, and I look at my 3 little ones and say, I don't want my life to be gone in 10 years. Then they're already out of the house. 10 years. They're little kids. And yet I didn't see them off, because I'm busy owning and working together. So consider these things. What does my life look like? Is ownership right for me? Check your vision. Do you want to be a solo owner? Do you want to be a group owner? Practices like Dr. Abizade's practice may be a partnership. Many oral surgery practices are. I don't know if yours is, Dr. Kayvon, but I do know that this does offer you the opportunity for some of that freedom. It comes at a cost. There are many partnerships that fail. There are many that are incredible. So be cautious, be careful. A DSO might actually be right for you. Maybe you work with a team like DentCorp or 123. Maybe you don't at all and you associate. Maybe you work for public health. Maybe you branch off and you become an entrepreneur in the dental field. Maybe you become faculty full-time. There's joy in all of it, but it depends on what your vision is. No matter what though, you have to check your purpose. Management versus control. Do you want to manage? Do you want to control? What is it about? Because if you want control, you will have some tough days. If you want to lead, then you won't necessarily be managing. Leadership is what's going to take you to the next level. And you lead people. What skill sets require that? You will manage metrics, and you must have them to be able to manage appropriately. I've learned that the hard way in many respects. Focused on leading, not managing metrics. Both are required. But if it's about control, be warned. Be warned. You will sometimes fail and it will hurt. So learn to let go of some of that control sometimes and know what you can manage. And as Peter Drucker, as I quoted earlier, would say, you can't measure what you can't manage. So manage your metrics and lead your people. Lesson number 10 is find mentors. Absolutely imperative. I believe many of you have mentors. I am mentors to some of you. I have my own mentors. This is such an awesome opportunity while you're in school, in your component societies that I recommended you find, from many of the people within industry. Speak to them. There's no money changing hands. You're a student right now. It's wonderful. And there may be money changing hands, but still, there are wise people out there. And you don't want just dental mentors. We were talking about a development early this week. My brother, myself, my father, we reached out to a gentleman who has a large construction company. He's a longtime patient friend of my father's. He owned the London Knights at one point. What a great guy to talk to. thinking outside the box. I've got a list of these people in my life that I'd like to connect with, sit down with, learn from. I'm not the greatest listener, but that's a skill that I'm continuing to develop. But it's important that when you sit, you focus on who those mentors are. What areas do you enjoy? What areas are you weak? Get mentors for all of them. Figure out which checklist that you can check off this time. But you will grow limitlessly when you have these people to reach out to. Find them. Above all, ownership means many things. The question is, when you own a practice, what do you own? Do you own the joys? Do you own the pitfalls? Do you own the patients? Do you own the staff? Do you own the excellence of your work? Do you own the problems with that? Do you own the letters that may come through of thanks or of sadness or of challenge? You own all of it. You own all of it. When you leave here today, focus on the freedom, but also focus on the failure and learning from that, and focus on the success of taking things to the next level and moving forward with your careers. It's really wonderful to have been able to share with all of you guys today. I'm sorry that I was a little slow and then rushed through some, but I'd like to be able to take any questions that you have. You can send them through here, or I can have Vlad interface as well. I've got as much time as you all want, but I also know that it's 2:31 on my clock here, and I don't want to put anyone else over time.
Thank you, Dr. Mahn. For those who now know Dr. Mahn, I spent the summer working, cleaning helping with cleaning and assisting and that sort of stuff. And he's a wonderful mentor and an even better human being. And so if you guys have any questions for him, please post it in the chat. We'll be here for a bit if you have any questions. If not, then we could proceed to closing remarks.
So I have first question here. How has your responsibilities as an owner and manager changed as your practice and staff has grown? It's a good question. It's a long answer. And I actually still have these other questions that I can try to hit if there's none others that come there. And I apologize if I didn't hit them yet. As an owner and a manager, I mean, again, managing metrics was one of the big changes. Learning to manage by metrics. Many people are focused on that, and we're often focused on the top line. Revenue, 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 revenue. Well, it's not much without the bottom line. We had invested a lot into our structural support. You know, with a growing team, you can't do that on your own. You need more people to support you. We hired a lot of people on desks so that some of my decisions were more strategic and focused. But I still had a dental team to manage, and I have clinical judgments to make in terms of, hey, what are we doing here? You know, what does the college say we can do? What is excellence in terms of what procedures, what results should come? And how do I, as an owner, take that and create definitive standards that we can live by, and doing it sensitively to my associates, with my associates, and with my team to make sure that we're hitting that standard. So my responsibilities continue to evolve. I am now front and center. Like, I follow the pod chats. We have pods. We've changed our team to different pods focused on each patient, where a small pod comes around a team, 2 hygienists, 1 dentist. Safe was a pod assistant, which is still growing in its new in the new role to serve a smaller team within a practice. So my responsibilities continue to change in terms of getting now really hyper focused on the day-to-day, whereas before it was really zoomed out, not managing the day-to-day at all. We're open right now as I have this conversation, and I'm not part of that, but I will deal with any rewards and consequences of what happened today should they arise, if a staff member were to quit, for example. So I think COVID's changed a lot of that, but you know, it kind of depends on what you want to do. Some people take a step back, they're not operationally involved at all. That comes at a cost sometimes. Somebody's got to manage that. And how you have that conversation or status exchange with that individual is that executive kind of leadership growth. And I do get executive coaching from a former leader of Amazon Canada who built what is known today as Amazon Canada, and was a former VP with BlackBerry. And you know, it's important to have those mentors as well so that you understand those responsibilities. Another question is impact of COVID essentially affecting everyone. What would you recommend a dental school about to graduate and solidifying a stable associateship? Right now, start your relationships, start your conversations. Look at the slides. You guys will have a copy of it. I'll send it afterwards. I've sent it already. Make sure that you're figuring out and comparing with the ODA community report. Where do you want to be? Look where you want to be first. You don't have to settle for what's out there, but you do have to cultivate a relationship with many. Have many opportunities. Talk to your profs at school. Build these relationships now. That is where you start. Forget about COVID. You're lucky that you have COVID in school because you are working with the most stringent standards ever to hit healthcare. Forget even medicine. If you can do this now and learn it in school where you have to, man, you guys are going to graduate a different beast than any of us generations before us. My dad didn't even have gloves or a mask when he was working, when he first started. So think of the changes. Don't worry about that. Focus on where you want to go and then who's there right now. Another question I had was, let me see here. What was the hardest thing about practice management when started and how about now? That's an HR question, I would say. For me, it's HR. Having staff, being too sensitive or not sensitive enough. The laws are sometimes may feel stacked against you. An 18-month mat leave is difficult, but how do you turn lemons into lemonade? You use an opportunity to say, hey, you can hire somebody in and now they grow with you, or that person that gets hired in doesn't. And then you create training systems, right? So the hardest part of practice management is truthfully your team members, the staff, the hours, the schedules, the complaints. I had a staff member who was living in a shelter last year. The personal challenges. You sometimes end up being kind of the shoulder to cry on, depending on what kind of personality you are. Or in my brother's case, not at all. So it depends on that, but it's important to have a partner that can support you in where you may not have that strength. Another question that I have here, and you can cut me off, Vlad, if it's 2:37, I know, so I know I had about 10 minutes, was the qualities or experience in potential staff, like a hygienist, an assistant, or an associate. I love that question. Our answer to that is very clear and simple: attitude and effort. Attitude and effort, attitude and effort. A smiling face is critical. You can tell very quickly the lines in someone's eyes. Do you smile? Are you angry? Do you have a lip jut? I'm very big into my nonverbal assessment of people and things and photos. But how people come across is critical, because do you want your staff member to be warm with the patient, or are they cold, or are they going to put up a fight? So attitude and effort. I want a good attitude. You can have a bad day. You're allowed to cry. I'm there for you. I have bad days too, but we got to have a good attitude, and we must have effort that is at least at a base level worthy of staying on as a staff member. Other than that, for experience, well, COVID has changed all that for us. We're starting to think outside the box, and I'm thinking of maybe, writing an article, seeing where things are going. And Safe, you were representative of this, because we had you come in and this new pod assistant role. It used to be an assistant all the time, but there's very few assistants out there right now, and it's very difficult. People don't want to work Saturdays and evenings for us when they can go and work less. When some dentist is like, I don't care, I'm going to pay beyond what a top wage would be to have this person. And staff will say, you know what, I got to do this for my family. And it's understandable. I'd probably make the same decision. But when we're in this situation, we kind of have a gun to our head as principals. We start thinking outside the box, saying, hey, if I can hire a university grad to do a non-dental thing, then it means I have to train them to be dental focused, right? We want to be good with that in terms of how we think about these things. So attitude and effort. Train for skill where we can. I've got a bunch of questions here, which I will hit until you cut me off. How have you found the best way to keep up with your clinical education once you graduated? CE courses, conferences? I'd say all of the above, but I would say focused clinical conglomerates, let's say, multi-session programs. I will tell you what I wish I did when I graduated: focus on occlusion. It's nauseating right now as dental students, because I don't think we truly understand it, but we don't truly understand it as dentists. We keep fixing the MIBL that breaks 3 times. You'll all have that experience. But when you start understanding why these things are happening from a really big picture level, there are many programs. There is COIS, I mean, there's LVI. There may be opinions on some of them. I haven't taken any of them, but I strongly recommend people look into that, because once you understand why, you can educate your patient, then you can zoom down whatever road, whether you want to be restorative or perio-focused or surgically focused as a GP, or you want to be a specialist. Understand these things. You will educate your patient better. CE, in terms of knowing what skill you're looking for, is the more important question. And then just dive deep there, get different experiences there, and just go nuts. And start right now. Start right now. That is very, very important. And conferences are great, but you know, you get a snapshot. So a lot of courses, my dad said, well, you get a few pearls out of it that you take it with you through your career, then it was worth it. But dive deep into an area and focus and master something, and do it one at a time. What CE would you recommend for a new grad? Man, I've got a lot of strong recommendations. I took a course called Guide, which was an implant-based course from a perioprosto. It was very intensive. I learned didactically and clinically implant placement at a very basic level in my residency, but I chose to focus in that area. That program was incredible. It was out of California, and very unbiased. You had to write exams. You had to do case presentations. That's the kind of stuff that you want to look at. Force yourself to not cheat. Force yourself to be holding yourself to a higher standard, and be in a group that will hold you to a higher standard, so you don't get away with, you know, doing poor quality work and accepting it because of A, B, or C. We're not always going to be successful in our treatment, but we must recognize when we're not, and we constantly have to reevaluate and continuously improve. What's one thing you would have done differently during your practice's expansion? I would have reconsidered how we purchased one of those practices. I would have talked about what it looked like to maintain the relationships with patients that built our practice, because we lost that in the last several years. I'm ashamed, but not ashamed to say it, because it just happened. I'm a dentist. I mean, I don't know how to run a practice, but I've been learning these things. And what was so painful was the distance between our patients and ourselves. When you're in the room with the providers, it was awesome. But walking into a front desk where I got 4 people standing there and they don't know the patient's name, that's not what we built our practice on. And I'm ashamed of that. And it showed in our reviews and how people looked at us. And COVID was the opportunity to rebuild. Safe, Brittany, you were a part of the pain that we've experienced. It's still painful, but we're almost there. We planned a 6-month return with rebuilding everything around our patients. And that is definitely something I would have done differently, is we considered how growth will still meet the relationship needs of our patients. And that is a painful experience of the last many years, and something that I'm seeing the other side of. We see the light now. How do you begin a conversation with someone you'd like to get mentorship from or interested in working with in the future? That's a great question, and something that I didn't do. I was, had the luxury of having my dad as a dentist, but he's not the only opinion, and I needed others. Reach out. I would say reach out to anyone. Say, hey, can I ask you a few questions? Express interest and curiosity. Ask them about them. There's nothing more than an old man wants than a young man to seek wisdom from him, or her in those cases. But my brother and I talk about this as well. It is an honor to be asked these things, but don't ask for you. Ask about them. Pick their brains. Everyone loves talking about themselves, and send an email. Use LinkedIn. Talk to a prof. Ask them if they know somebody in an area of your interest. Figure out where you want to go. Find the people involved. Cold call and say, hey, I follow what you do. I love what you're saying. Can I ask you a few questions? Start there. Hey, is there ever an opportunity to shadow you? Can I ever just come in? If you're ever looking for a volunteer, I got so many days or weeks off, then ask them questions. Be curious is the answer. Be curious, and make sure that they do the talking. First-year dental student says, one of the hardest parts is just initiating the thinking process of owning a private practice one day. Starting off with creating a vision in your career is very, very important. That's where you start. So what does that mean? It means, what does your life look like first? Build your career around your life and what you see it. Like I said, if you want to fly and jet set all over the world, how are you going to do that? Are you going to be working clinically? Are you going to find an area? Are you going to be lecturing? Like, what do you want to do? The lecturing is maybe an aside from this. We're talking about ownership. But, that leads into whether you're going to be a partner, whether you're going to have a partner, whether you're going to own it all. Maybe a DSO supports you. You know, what supports do you need? What are your strengths? Evaluate those things first, and then start talking to your professors who have been in private practice. You're in first year, so it might be harder. Talk to your dentist, and then reach out to others. There are mentorship opportunities out there. Talk to the clinical people as you accelerate in school as well. Going back to a story of laying off staff due to COVID, how did you go about recovering from that situation? This is the last question I have here, so I don't mind focusing a little bit more on the response to that. What strategies did you implement? All right, here you go, Dale. We laid off about 65 staff. We had only leadership still left, and we cut a lot of our leadership from what we did. My brother had an executive assistant. We had a performance improvement facilitator. We had group leads who mostly sat at desks a lot of the time, or at least had a lot of desk time. That was one for hygiene, one for admin, one for, I was it for dentists, one for assistants. We had a steri team. I have an inventory team. I mean, we're all under one roof. It's a large practice, but we didn't always look or care about our bottom line as much as we are now with COVID, because we're like, hey, we're reinvesting as we grow. Like, how do you manage? You know, if you have 12 kids and you're a single parent, you know, you only got so much you can do. You can hire a nanny, hire 2 nannies, hire 3 nannies, and we had a few nannies. But sometimes it's better to have the older kids look after the younger kids. So when we go outside, we teach them to dress themselves. We put checklists in place and say, hey, are you dressed? What do I have to dress? What's the cycle? Do we do 12 loads of laundry or do you 1? And is it at this time? So it comes down to efficiency of practice and protocol and process. And it caused us to step back and look at our vision. What is our vision? What built us? And what we knew was that nobody was truly having an easy time as we grew so much, because we could focus on the relationship in the chair, but we couldn't always bring that to the front desk or to the phone. And we're still not on it at the phone with new hiring to do. And with a whole bunch of staff who left, some of them left the profession outright, longtime staff, decades of experience, who are like, I'm going to work with my husband and my kids. Like, I just realized that COVID makes me realize I don't want to spend so many hours working. Understandably, I'm doing kind of the same right now, but I do miss it. And I will come back to a certain degree of work. And with some of these other staff, it was like, we can't get assistance. It is a nationwide epidemic, and that was known before COVID. So COVID's made it worse. Now wages are rising through the roof. Now you have people who really are having a difficult time finding anybody, so they'll do anything to get anybody in the chair. So you've got the same people moving to different practices, and that was pre-COVID too. So our primary focus has been starting to think outside the box. We just hired a dentist from Columbia as a treatment coordinator who's going to be a pod lead. And our treatment coordinators will now double as leadership. So they will lead their pod. A pod is 1 dentist, 2 hygienists, 1 assistant for the dentist, and then something called a pod assist, which is basically a secondary assistant. But that person, where possible, will not be an assistant. It allows us to pull from, let's say, the restaurant industry, the customer service industry. We have university grads. But what does that mean? Well, they can't take impressions, they can't take x-rays. But can they flip a room quickly? Can they be responsive? Can they find instruments? Maybe not. I don't know what this instrument is. Well, maybe I have to look at my processes and say, how are we stocking them? How can I look and have my child find a book with the Dewey Decimal System? You know, they don't have to know rocket science to find the rocket science book. So considering our processes and how we catalog and how we improve what we do we go 5 steps to do one process, or can we go 1 step, or can I have it immediately at my side? You know, starting with those visions. And my vision right now for our dentist team is to say, you know, how do we, what you want when you need it. That's the goal. That's the outcome. That is the road's maxim. So how do we get there? Well, the question is, what do they need? Well, who's going to define that? I'm not. They should. I've done a lot of real strong, tight control, as I was telling you, but it isn't control. Let's let them have that control. Let's let them be able to manage. So with the staff laid off and recovering from it, being able to get the right people with attitude and effort, hiring for skill, thinking outside the box. Next step is phones. I don't need somebody to be dental focused on the phones if I can develop a really good algorithm for answering a call. They do it all over the world. You know, you guys have all called tech support and had that experience, and not necessarily you've had bad ones. But when there's people who are truly empathetic and care, I want to hire those people. I want to hire specialists there. Now I'm not stuck with just the dental profession being my only pool of candidates. But that requires me to train for excellence. So we've had to build a very robust training program, which is train the trainer, checklists, scorecards for the trainee and the trainer, so I know how things are going. The training matrix, this skill 1 day to day 10. So say if you haven't seen that, but that's like rolled out Monday for our new staff. And that's for every position now. So that now you're not having a gun to your head, as I say every day, with the staff member saying, sorry, it's my way or the highway. You know, we can't run a business like that. That's not sustainable. And that's the way a lot of us are running as dental practice owners. And you know, we're not there yet. Let me tell you, it's still painful. Every day is, but knowing where you're going and knowing where the end is and working backwards is one of the things that we have to do. So that's our recovery strategy right now. And I look forward to seeing the success of that when it's done. But our pods are basically set as teams. It's like, this is your schedule, this is your team. No more plug and play. You know, consistency and reliability and predictability are important here. I can go on forever. How many other questions at all? I'll see if I have any other here. I had one last question, which was, I believe, in-house lab versus outsourcing. Most people will outsource their lab work. CREC is becoming big and monstrous. You guys have that opportunity. Seek it in school. Les Kalman, Dr. Kalman, I think, is somebody who will be able to help with that. If you want that opportunity, talk now. Speak to them right now. And for the student, for Ashley, who asked that other question, go talk to Dr. Kalman. He's somebody, he's got interesting takes on things, and he's had private practice experience. And you know, when we talk about, let's say, some of these opportunities with lab, he's the guy to talk to. Talk to lab people right now and see what they do and what the joys and pitfalls are for them. But if you can have an in-house lab, of course it's wonderful. It's another thing to manage. Do you want to sit there and bake the stuff and put shades on, or do you not want to do a shading at all and have a poor quality looking tooth? It may not be poor quality, it just may not match as well. That's something that a lab does. Maybe there's other ways to think outside the box altogether. That's where I'm going with things. My brother being a lab tech in a year, you know, digital dentistry has come next level. That is something that you guys are going through school with plenty of opportunities. That's something that you want to consider. You know, hey, when I have to sit there and do this lab work, but there's this digital alternative, how could I potentially do this if I had my own practice? Think there now. Anything that you do, any process that you have, consider, is there a digital alternative, which you guys are, you know, you've grown up in the digital age. I didn't even have, like, I learned with overhead projectors when I was in university. Like, no one had a laptop when in undergrad. I even called it university. Like undergrad, like it was overhead projectors with a wipeable marker. So you're growing up in a very different time. But consider the analog throwbacks that you're still learning in school, because school hasn't caught up, and figure out the digital doppelganger, or the communication kind of efficiencies that you can have. This is something that everyone's been forced to consider in COVID in terms of screening and forms and different things. And what a great opportunity to push us to the next level, because post-COVID, we will be rewarded for these investments that we've made and for these considerations. But while you're in school, you know, go nuts, guys. Go nuts. It's a great opportunity to start thinking about it now.
Thanks so much, Dr. Mahn. That was a great presentation. We can listen to you talk all day, to be honest. I feel myself like I just want to keep picking your brain. So really, thank you so much. That was great. We are going to end the event now. So we just want to say some closing remarks to everyone that stuck around. Thank you so much. We hope you gained as much as we gained from all this, and we look forward to kind of progressing with Debbie throughout the year and getting more great speakers like Dr. Mahn speaking to everyone here. We personally had a blast doing this, so thank you all so much. I'm going to pass it on to Nima N again. He's just going to say a quick word, and we're going to end the meeting there. Okay, so Dr. Mahn, thank you very much, and hopefully we'll talk soon.
Yeah, thank you very much. And when I am in clinic, when I do return, I haven't set any dates. I'm there for you all. I spend a lot of time. I enjoy what I do very much. I'm an open book. Others have been kind enough to share with me, and I continue to seek their mentorship, and vice versa. And one day you will have stuff that you will share with me that I will seek knowledge for. It comes full circle, man. You guys right now have stuff to share with me to create opportunities in my practice as an owner. And it's important that we keep our minds open, not prejudge people or things or patients or staff. I've learned stuff from assistants too. So keep that in mind, humble yourselves, and you'll go far. I look forward to seeing you all in clinic at some point. And Dr. Abazadeh, I look forward to meeting you in person one day.